Right, go on then, Maui. What's your good point?
Mine is about the recently announced CSGO Asia Championships. It's just that I think it's a good thing for the space for tournaments to finally be going on with tier one teams in China again. This was more or less because of, I'd say, their COVID restrictions, where it was so difficult for such a long time to get back into that country and to get visas acquired for everybody. But now that we see that ENCE, for example, being one of the teams invited, there's G2, there's FaZe, MOUZ, Liquid right now. They're going to have a couple of Chinese teams in through qualifiers, and then I think they have a eighth remaining slot for I don't even think they've really announced what that eighth slot is, but either way I just think that getting the game over back into Asia in terms of a big LAN is really important for the health of the scene. And because the game over the last couple of years, especially during the pandemic and after, it became so Eurocentric, it started feeling like that's the only region you can find success in. We've seen teams like Liquid, for example, just throw away the North American sort of heritage and just swing over to become a European team because they've recognized it too. But I think that if you start having events in these kinds of regions, if there's like just building up a fan base, or also even giving their pros in that region chances to play against tier one pros on the planet, then you create opportunities for those regions to get back into the scene, for them to potentially pop off also. And I would say that Counter-Strike, and really any sport for that matter, does get better when there is more international competition.
Have you ever been to a tournament in China before, Dija?
No, never.
Ah, okay.
I mean, it's good that we are finally moving some events outside of Europe. And as a player, I like to travel. And it's nice to go to the new place, but it's also depends on two things, like if you can park there with anyone, and also if the internet is good. Because what happened in Arabia, we couldn't park because no one was parking, like, or the teams parked when we couldn't park, and then also internet was really shaky. So when you
Right.
cannot park and you cannot have a proper connection, it's like, what can you do during the day? Like, you can do the Fury for the officials, you can prepare for like for the matches, you can prepare for maps, but outside of that, what can you do? We are not gonna play aimbots 24 hours. Like, this is what we need as players. Like, we need at least to play a few pracs, but it's hard. It's also the same thing happened in Brazil. Like, we could practice only Brazil teams, so it's not really helpful for the teams. Like, I understand that people want to move the events outside of Europe, but it's not really the best idea sometimes.
I'm just trying to double check on this edition that they're doing now. Because the strange thing, if people don't know, because this is a tournament that's been run a number of times, especially obviously before the online era. In fact, people might remember it was won most famously by Mouse Sports in the 2019 edition, which was the first event that kicked on that like 5 final spree they went on with Rops and Frozen and Carrigan. And then if you remember, the year before was when it was won by Simple's Navi, when they had the 3 tournaments they won. They won like a Star Series and then Cologne as well at the same time. So it's actually an event that's been around a number of years, but it was always like this type of a format. It would always be sort of like 2 really good teams, then like 2 like sort of good teams in the top 10, then 2 like whatever, and then 2 like Asian teams or something, or like, 1 from Korea and 1 from China or something. So I'm not sure for this edition, but seeing as it says like all the other ones, it's had the organizer is Perfect World, who, if people don't know, is like the main organizer of Valve related games. I think it's even the distributor of CSGO in China. It's the people who've like helped run like the Dota tournaments there and these past ones. As far as I know, it was nearly always PGL just white labeled it for them, and they were the ones that ran it. That's why people like me and Anders, and I think maybe even Semler, have been there in past years. So it's certainly interesting that it's come back again, because it has been so long since we've had Chinese events at this point in time. And if people don't know, it was actually, without going too much into it, that's actually what sort of spoiled this year of CSGO and the timing of bringing the new game out or not, because there was supposed to be a major the the end of this year, kind of like the sort of time that this event would happen. And it would have been in China if people don't know. But at the time, to be fair, this was last year they decided all this. At the time, no one knew if we could, essentially, since no one knew, essentially it was just taken as we can't. They just thought we won't have the logistics to be able to do it a major there. So they cancelled it. And that's the reason why, I mean, this is actually leading to one of my points later. That's right, basically, aside from tournaments like this, we're just sort of sitting on our hands until next year when Katowice comes around, like for big events in CSGO. Like, we're not just waiting for CS2. There's also just no events scheduled, unfortunately, because of all this weird logistical stuff. So all I'll say on this one is, people might know, I'm not a guy who buys the hype on a lot of this stuff. Like, I don't really think like having events places makes people play the game or care about it more or grind more. I think that's sort of like a movie storyline. But I will say, the key thing for me is this. They already have had like a decent amount of events in China in CSGO. The key thing I am going to look towards that I'll tie into this is when CS2 comes out, I just really hope Valve has rethought their whole strategy. Because if they just do the same thing they did in CSGO and think that they can just distribute CSGO and CS2 in China and that people will just play, they won't, I'll tell you right now. It's not the way their culture works at all. It's all about like those LAN cafes and is the game installed on the PC? And if you go in the LAN cafe and you're a kid who doesn't know what game, is there like a cutout of a Counter-Strike guy saying like, check out the new game and, you know, get a skin or something if you sign it? That's the stuff that makes people play the game. And so to me, the really interesting thing about the timing of having events in China again and CS2 coming about is right now, there is still a very real chance. Because if people don't know, Riot sat on their hands a long time about getting Valorant released in China. It only just as far as I know got released recently or like first started to be played. I'm not even sure if they have servers fully yet, etc. But there's still in theory a window where you could actually like take that ground from Valorant. Because if people don't know, in League of Legends, the main player base and viewer base is China. That's what pumps that game's viewership up to be more than ours. If we could ever have that in CSGO, by the way, that's where CSGO could become like the biggest game of the whole world. At the moment, it can never be because there's millions of Chinese people watching League of Legends. So for me, that's the real opportunity there. Is if you ever figure out how to actually like do the publishing and marketing in those regions, that's when the game would really, really get huge. Because there's a little hint. I know people are going to think, who cares though? Like, we all saw, you know, Tai Lu in CSGO. No, Tai Lu was a bunch of ex-CSGO players and people, or what CS 1.6 players and people who played for years who were just hanging around like a lot of the Koreans were, you know, Termi and those guys that were still around back then. And they were just trying to compete. If you haven't seen, in Valorant right now, one of the better teams, EDG, actually is a bunch of Chinese players in Valorant. And their mechanical skill, because they're like 17-year-old players, is mega. Like, if people don't know, the player base in China is crazy for games. So if you can ever get those millions of people activated, I'm telling you right now, even though no one will believe me in CSGO, if it ever happens, this will just look like so prescient, it's insane. I'll tell you right now, if they ever get it so like millions and millions of people in China play, there will be someone like Simple level that will come out of China. I'm not joking, literally, because you don't know the scale of the number of people we're talking about, guys. Like, it's just so many people that like the chances become incredible to do that. And as a random aside, because they all come from those PC cafes, this will sound weird, but they actually all come from the opposite way of playing TAC FPS than we all do in the West. You know, in the West, everyone's got that meta down of like, right, because you're on your home PC, you've used loads of like different sensitivities and mouses, you all move to like a fairly low sensitivity with a big mouse pad and a thing, and then you all just like learn your act. No, they all do the opposite. They're all still in PC cafes with that tiny mouse mat and a shit mouse and insanely high sense. And what that means is, if people don't know this, it sounds like a boomer angle, but if you know about mice, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you ever get good at hand aiming on a really high sense, this is how Elise aims, if people don't know, your aim will be fucking bonkers. Now, the reason people moved away from that is you'll get injuries very easily because you're just abusing that muscle like insanely, like you were, you know, like a fucking surgeon or something. But that is the ultimate way to control spray, etc. in games. Like, you will get really fucking good if you're actually talented in the game. So there is certainly potential there. I don't know whether it'll happen, and spoiler, I won't be at the event. So, see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.